Welcome. Hello, I'm Annie Moyer here with Sun and Moon, and this is Pooja Virani, and we're going to talk about our favorite topic, yoga. So, Pooja, when I first met you, you were telling me about having just returned from Bali and having lived there and taught yoga for some time, and then coming here and noticing how different it was in all kinds of ways. And I want to hear about that.
I remember when I lived in Bali, I loved it, but it was also a place for retreat. So it was really hard living there. It was really great visiting there. And what that meant in terms of teaching yoga and studying yoga was that since it felt like this place where everyone was on retreat, I just felt like I wasn't getting real life problems, right? All my students were uber flexible. They could get into all the poses. Everyone could do handstands and Pinchamayurasana. And then there I was working to nail my headstand and still struggling light years behind everyone else. It was less about me and my position as a teacher, just that I reflected back. I had spent more than 10 years in an office before then, working in DC and in other places around the world and around the country. And there was no stress in Bali. And I remember being stressed as an office worker. And I remember all of my students, and the reason I went to yoga was because I was stressed. So I thought, well, it's great to take people on retreat and give them this opportunity. And I want to be dealing with real life clients. I want to deal with people who have real life problems, and I don't have any problems. Now, during the pandemic, I wish I had moved back to Bali, quite frankly, to get away from all of the real life problems. And it just didn't feel sustainable to me as real life. It felt more like this ongoing Maya that's beautiful to escape into for a second, but is not the reality of day-to-day existence.
Yeah, Maya means illusion, and it's described in the teachings as the veil that separates us from our true selves. It's a barrier between who we really are and what the circumstances around us in the world are doing with or for or to us.
Absolutely.
And I love that you use that term. Talk more about some of those mayas, those illusions that you've discerned as an evolving human.
I think I make life really hard for myself. So other people were probably enjoying the vacation life in Bali. And I don't think I ever fully was, because I just wanted to help people and felt like I couldn't do that. I mean that in the sense that there weren't any problems, right? I didn't have to work full time to make a living. I could get paid in US or Canadian wages and make ends meet for months, because cost of living was very cheap compared to the DC area. And then a really harsh reality that hit me was I had to move back in with my parents, because when you're a nomad and you've spent many years not living or making US currency and you move back to the US, things get really expensive really fast. So I had to move in with my parents. And there's this quote, it's always attributed to the Dalai Lama, don't know if it is. And it's, if you believe you've realized liberation or enlightenment, go spend a week with your parents. So I spent many years establishing myself in the DMV area, living with my parents and just being very patient to my students, and then going upstairs and being like, well, you stop making noise during my classes. This is terrible. This is why we have yoga, right? It's not so that we can get into this super flexible pose, but it's so that we can deal with the realities of sometimes the people we love, including our families, can be major pains in the butt. And so can we. Well, it's not pain and management, because I don't want people to manage pain. It's pain-free movement, because I want people to live lives without pain, right? And this is, to me, ties exactly into yoga, because yoga is the goal of liberation. And it's really hard to liberate ourselves on an emotional and spiritual level when we're in pain. If we're not meeting that basic hierarchy of needs, that basic ability to just exist in the temple of our own bodies, which is really, again, the purpose of yoga, right? Make your body an instrument so that you can go out and fulfill your greater purpose or potential in life. It's just an instrument. Like anatomically, I might never get to certain places, and I'm flexible enough to do everything I need to do, both for fun and for work, on a day-to-day basis. And that makes all the difference. I think vinyasa still serves me from time to time. It's what I really liked about it is I learned a very slow flow of vinyasa. I learned a slow style. So I found it both physically challenging as well as meditatively moving. And if I go back to teaching it, which I'm sure I will at some point, I like to bring those same challenges because a lot of times I get students who just want the workout. So I lure them in with the workout and then have them sitting in this place of emotion and heart and breathing. And again, this is just one more on that bucket list of like, here's why we do yoga.
I, and I love the lure. I love the lure because there's so much discovery to be had. And
Mhm.
if we if we said up front as yoga teachers that this is what we're offering you, a place to unpeel your layers and years of emotional suffering that you've buried or unconsciously harbored, nobody would come.
Exactly. But that's what it is, right? Like the number of times I've landed up crying on a yoga mat and I was like, I don't know the meaning of life, but this is amazing. And,
Activism is a part of your life. And as a South Asian woman and as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, talk about how that shows up in your yoga, both as a practitioner and a teacher and a leader.
well, I left my office job, which was nonprofits and international development and essentially activism to move into meditate. But as a brown queer person, it's impossible not for things to be political, right? I think when people say not everything is about race, not everything is about sexuality, it's because they have a certain amount of privilege. And I'm not saying privilege in a bad way. I'm just saying that let's own it, right? The fact that not everyone questions my gender identity is because I have cisgender privilege, which I'm very grateful for. And recently I've started being misgendered. So it's now things I've had to start contemplating about personally, about, like, what does this mean? How can I help others? So I just think this is part of my day-to-day life. And as a teacher, I have a platform on which I can educate people. So I feel like, why not bring that into yoga? Because it is part of yoga, right? Yoga is unity, yoga is union. So we can't talk about union and say, I want the best chaturanga ever. Yeah, you can have the best chaturanga ever. That is a great goal, but where's the union in that, right? Union has to involve more than one person. So in order to do that, you need to work on ways to find unity with other people in your community and people of all different castes, colors, sexualities, genders.
So, Pooja, your parents were born and raised in India, and I know you have a strong connection to this ancient land where yoga was born. And like we were just saying, I know yoga has become really disconnected from its rich roots, and this is an incredible source of frustration at best. And at worst, it's harmful to so many people whose culture is dismissed as a result. And so, say more about why it's so important for yoga practitioners and especially white American yoga practitioners to understand this.
Again, the end goal of yoga is union. And if you look at the original text, it's about liberation regardless of who you are born as. So when we make yoga the exclusive property or purview of white, upper class, cisgendered, straight Americans, then we're taking out the global majority and saying, this isn't a path that you get. I get freedom, but you don't, or I get freedom at your expense. I think one, it's that recognition of privilege. And then two is the fact that so often when I enter into discussions, people will say, well, I'm a good person and I didn't own slaves or I didn't do this. And understand that the ramifications are much more current than you think they are. I wasn't raised in India, but growing up in the US, I got teased, I got spat at, I had sand thrown at me on the playground. I was basically mocked and teased for my name. And then these same Americans were going into yoga classes where they're using the word puja and they're throwing around this word and there's no discrimination. There's no, okay, well, how are we mistreating this person in this setting, but then using their culture for our own benefit in another? And at no way is this person benefiting. Are there no reparations being made, right? I know that's a loaded term, but the idea is to benefit that culture. I am an LGBTQ person of color. So as far as the totem pole goes, I'm not up here, I'm somewhere down here. And I have a lot more privilege than people who have no education. I have a lot more privilege than people who are Black in this country. I have a lot more privilege than people who are trans. So understanding my relative power and how I can help people with the gifts I've been given is exactly what yoga is, right? And one of the reasons I like Sun and Moon is in the past when I've held social justice workshops, I don't make a ton of money doing social justice workshops. Let me just put that. And it's a tremendous act of emotional labor as somebody who is within these minority groups. So one, I'm just going to call out Annie and say, Annie always gives me a favorable split as a studio owner. You're allowed to edit that out, Annie, but she does, right? Like, because she understands that I'm operating from a place of marginalization and I'm doing this because of, we have a train going by, because of
I
heart-centered.
love the train.
So I'm doing this because of that. And I have also had a number of people who are not in the queer community, who are not in particular communities, who have donated, who have given scholarships, who have said, Pooja, if you want to attend something, or if you know somebody who would like to attend this workshop, and to me, that's exactly what we can do, right? That's what reparations are, is just using the means we have to help others. That doesn't mean we need to make a ton of money. Let's say you made an extra $5 doing something. Could somebody benefit from that $5 today more than you could?
I like to break down the word reparations and just think of it in terms of repair. It's my own personal, small as it is, contribution to repairing the harms, not negating the lofty ideals of democracy and freedom that we all aspire to and hold close in our hearts as Americans. There's a dark side, inarguably, and that's where the repair work needs to be had. You can have a beautiful building, a palatial, magnificent, beautiful structure that strikes awe in the heart, but you gotta repair the parts of it that are broken.
And we come full circle to yoga as healing.
I love this beautiful bike that's hanging on the wall behind you, and evokes for me such your spirit of freewheeling and like love of movement and love of the way movement helps you connect to the world.
That bike is my girlfriend's. It's called Warrior 2, which is this crazy coincidence because that's my logo as well, as Warrior 2. But I also think it's fun because once you start finding yoga, you can find yoga in anything. And the yoga is the approach. The yoga is the mindfulness, the dedication and the focus on the task at hand, and just that connection with my own body and breath.
And what about your parents in terms of the other limbs of yoga?
Their path is devotion. So I was raised in a very religious household. I was raised Hindu. I would consider myself a lapsed Hindu. That's a lot more due to the societal infrastructure surrounding religion than to the actual beliefs, because as you mentioned, there's tons of sexually fluid and gender fluid and body positive examples in Hinduism, but it's also been shaped by colonialism. So recent culture has been shaped by this very anti-queer stance, which made me feel alienated. And in a way, immigrant culture is actually more conservative than culture that's evolving back in the home country. So that kind of alienated me, but I'm still very spiritual. And I learned about all 8 limbs growing up because that's what they practice regularly, right? The first time, my first YTT, I recognized all of the Sanskrit. I was like, wow, I thought I didn't know any of this, but I knew all of the terms because these were just commonplace terms. A lot of people know about kirtan. Bhajan is essentially call and response. It's Hindu devotional singing, and it can also be Buddhist, Sikh, Jain, some sort of devotional religious singing. Usually it consists of a namamali, which is a string of names of gods, right? So you could be like Krishna, Rama, Vishnu, Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, right? We can make it even multi-faith because Hindus, we love everyone. Most families in India have a specific family guru or a Swami that they follow. My parents follow Sri Satya Sai Baba, who has passed away. He lived in southern India, and even if I'm no longer involved with the organization, I find it a really compelling organization because all their money goes towards education and health, right? And you can tell who's a legitimate guru and who isn't by where's their money going, right? Amma is the same way, the hugging mother. A lot of money paid towards water projects, education, healthcare, specifically education for women. So that's who they follow. So I've been to the ashram dozens of times when I was growing up. So it's just very common practice in India to have these gurus, and they're not exactly priests, right? Depending on the guru status, you either pray to them as a god or they are a teacher who is teaching you how to access God. So like, just like a yoga teacher, right? Like a yoga teacher was a guru. Here is how you access that own thing. You don't need to pray to me. You have the path within you, but here are how you access those tools. We studied all of these texts and we practiced golden values, right? Nonviolence. Part of it, ahimsa is our number one yama, but it's also every single culture values nonviolence. They value truth, compassion, these universal truths that we can all get behind.
He's not a priest, he's a guru. He is showing you the light, not saying I am the light, saying the light shines through me and can shine through you too. And here's the way, which is where yoga in the West has gone so profoundly wrong. Because the teachers that have come to be idolized, not all, but many, were the ones who were saying exactly the opposite, is that here it stops with me, and do what I say and be like me, and I will tell you and I will give you all the answers, and do this sequence and turn the heat up in the room to this degree of temperature.
Because at the end of the day, that's exactly the problem we were exploring earlier, right? If I'm focused on my own chaturanga, which doesn't mean there isn't a place to focus on your own chaturanga, like continue to focus on your own chaturanga or whatever pose you aspire to. And the buck can't stop there. It cannot stop at you. It needs to be a universal thing. It needs to include other people. We're not yogis. We're not yoginis. We're not monks, right? Let's stop calling ourselves that. Let's stop calling ourselves goddesses. We are yoga lovers. And if we happen to be able to teach other people something, fantastic, right? But it's nothing that we invented. Like, I have invented nothing. It's just coming through me. And if I say it in a way that resonates with you, fantastic.